The Haunted House on Elm Street. Moving day was supposed to be an exciting time for the Johnson family. They had just bought their dream home, a beautiful Victorian house on Elm Street, and couldn't wait to start their new life there. However, from the moment they arrived, they could sense that something was off. As they started to unload the moving truck, they heard a loud creaking noise coming from the house. At first, they assumed it was just the old house settling, but the noise continued, growing louder and more persistent. Then, as they were carrying boxes into the house, the front door slammed shut on its own, causing the family to jump with fright. As they settled in for the night, they began to notice other strange occurrences. The lights flickered on and off, and they could hear the sound of footsteps coming from empty rooms. Every time they turned around, they felt as though someone was watching them, but they could never catch a glimpse of anything. The Johnsons tried to convince themselves that they were just imagining things, that they were letting their nerves get the best of them. But the strange occurrences continued, growing more frequent and more intense. They tried to rationalize the events, coming up with explanations for each occurrence, but the more they tried to explain away the strange happenings, the more they became convinced that something truly supernatural was at play. As the days passed, the family began to feel increasingly uneasy in the house. They would hear faint whispers in the middle of the night, and they would feel the sensation of someone breathing down their neck. It was as though the house was alive, and it was not happy that they had moved in. Finally, the Johnsons decided that they had had enough. They knew they needed to get to the bottom of what was happening in their new home. They called in a paranormal investigator to investigate the house, hoping that he could help them understand what was going on. The investigator arrived and immediately set to work, examining every nook and cranny of the house. He found evidence of previous residents experiencing similar paranormal activity and discovered that the house had a dark past. The investigator concluded that the house was indeed haunted and that a malevolent spirit was at work. As the family grappled with the reality that their new home was haunted, they knew they had a difficult decision to make. Could they live with the constant fear and unease, or would they need to leave their dream home behind? In the end, they decided to fight back against the malevolent spirit, determined to reclaim their home and restore peace to their lives. After moving into their new home on Elm Street, the Johnson family couldn't help but feel like they were being watched. It started with small things like flickering lights and strange noises, but soon escalated to full-on paranormal activity. One evening, while the family was watching a movie in the living room, they heard a loud crash coming from the kitchen. They jumped up to investigate and found that all of the cabinets and drawers had been flung open, spilling their contents all over the floor. The family was stunned, and the children began to cry. As the days went on, the occurrences grew increasingly more severe. Doors would slam shut on their own, objects would move across the room, and they could hear eerie whispers coming from the empty hallways. The family was terrified, but they didn't know what to do. One night, as the family was settling down to sleep, they heard a series of loud bangs coming from the attic. The noise was so loud that it shook the entire house. The family was too scared to go investigate, so they just huddled together in their beds, hoping that the noise would stop soon. The next morning, they bravely went up to the attic to investigate. What they found left them frozen with fear. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and there was a strange, sickly smell that seemed to hang in the air. The family realized that they were in over their heads, and they needed to find help. They decided to call in a paranormal investigator, hoping that he could help them understand what was going on. The investigator arrived and immediately set to work, examining the house from top to bottom. He discovered that the house had a dark past and that it was built on a cursed piece of land. The investigator believed that a malevolent spirit was responsible for the hauntings, and he advised the family to leave the house immediately. The family refused to leave, and they decided to take matters into their own hands. They purchased sage and other materials used in spiritual cleansing and started a ritual to cleanse the house of the evil spirit. As they recited the incantations and lit the sage, they could hear the spirit growling in the shadows. But they continued, determined to rid their home of the malevolent presence. Finally, the ritual was complete, and the family waited for the results. There was a tense silence as they waited for the spirit to make its presence known. But as the minutes passed, the house remained eerily quiet. The family breathed a sigh of relief and finally felt like they could live peacefully in their home. However, as the weeks passed, the family started to notice strange occurrences happening again. It seemed as though the spirit was back, stronger than ever. The Johnson family realized that they had only won a temporary victory, and that the fight against the evil spirit was far from over. After the Johnson family's unsuccessful attempt to rid their house of the malevolent spirit, they were more afraid than ever. Every night, they heard strange noises and felt like they were being watched. They started to lose sleep and were always on edge, waiting for the next haunting to occur. One night, while the family was sleeping, the mother, Sarah, was jolted awake by the sound of her son's voice. She bolted upright and looked around the room, but there was nobody there. She shrugged it off, thinking it was just a bad dream, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next morning, Sarah's son, Max, told her that he had a nightmare where a little boy came to visit him. Max said that the boy was sad and scared and that he kept repeating the same phrase over and over again. Max couldn't remember what the phrase was, but he said it sounded like it was in a different language. Sarah was alarmed by Max's dream, and she started to do some research. She discovered that the house was built on the site of an old orphanage, which was destroyed in a fire. Many children lost their lives in the fire, and it was believed that their spirits still lingered in the area. Sarah realized that the little boy Max saw in his dream was likely one of the orphanage's spirits, and that he was trying to communicate with them. She contacted a psychic medium who confirmed her suspicions and offered to help the family communicate with the spirits. The medium arrived at the house, and the family gathered around the table. The medium closed her eyes and began to speak in a soft voice. Suddenly, she stopped, and her eyes opened wide. She said that she could feel the presence of many spirits in the house, and that they were all trying to communicate at once. The medium went on to explain that the spirits were stuck in the house and were unable to move on to the afterlife. They were looking for closure, and they needed the family's help to find it. Sarah and her family agreed to help the spirits, and they started to investigate the history of the orphanage. They discovered that the fire that destroyed the orphanage was caused by a group of kids who were playing with matches. The children were never punished for their actions, and the spirits of the orphanage had been seeking justice ever since. The Johnson family worked tirelessly to give the spirits the justice they deserved. They contacted the local authorities, who agreed to reopen the case and investigate the arson. As a result of their efforts, the children who caused the fire were finally brought to justice, and the spirits of the orphanage were finally able to move on. The Johnson family no longer heard strange noises or felt like they were being watched. They knew that they had helped the spirits find closure, and they could finally live in peace. The family thought that the worst was over, but they were wrong. The night after the investigation was completed, strange things started happening again. It started with the sound of footsteps in the hallway, but when they checked, there was nobody there. Then the lights started flickering, and the doors would open and close on their own. The family was sure that the malevolent spirit had returned. Sarah decided to do some more research, and she found out that the house was built on sacred land that had been stolen from the Native American tribe that once lived there. It was said that the tribe put a curse on the land, vowing that any who lived on it would suffer the wrath of their spirits. The Johnson family was terrified, but they knew they couldn't move out of the house. They had spent all their money on buying the house and they had nowhere else to go. They decided to seek out the help of a Native American spiritual leader who could help them break the curse. The spiritual leader agreed to help the family and performed a ritual to cleanse the house. The family felt a sense of relief, and the strange occurrences stopped. The house felt peaceful again, and the family was finally able to sleep without fear. However, the family's relief was short-lived. One night, Sarah woke up to find her daughter, Lily, standing at the foot of her bed. Lily was motionless, with a blank stare on her face. Sarah tried to talk to her, but she didn't respond. Sarah knew that something was wrong. The family took Lily to a doctor, but there was nothing physically wrong with her. They consulted with the spiritual leader, who explained that Lily had been possessed by the spirit of a young girl who had died on the land. The spirit was seeking revenge against the Johnson family, who had taken what was rightfully hers. The spiritual leader performed another ritual to banish the spirit from Lily's body. It was a dangerous ritual, but they had no other choice. The ritual was successful, and Lily returned to her normal self. The Johnson family had been through so much, but they had finally broken the curse on the land. They moved on with their lives, but they never forgot the terror they had experienced. They were grateful for the help of the spiritual leader and the psychic medium who had helped them navigate the supernatural world. They knew that they were lucky to be alive, and they would never forget the horrors of the malevolent spirit that haunted their home. The Johnson family had finally found peace in their home, and they were grateful for the help they had received from the spiritual leader and the psychic medium. They had been through so much, and they hoped that they would never have to experience anything like that again. However, one day, Sarah noticed something strange in the backyard. There was a small hole in the ground, and she could hear strange whispers coming from it. She tried to ignore it, but the whispers grew louder every day. The family tried to fill the hole, but it kept reappearing. One night, the family was awakened by the sound of strange music coming from the backyard. They looked outside and saw a group of hooded figures dancing around the hole. The family was terrified, and they knew that they needed help once again. Sarah and her husband contacted the psychic medium, who immediately recognized the situation. She explained that the hole was a portal to the spirit world, and that the hooded figures were trying to open it to unleash the spirits onto the world. The psychic medium helped the family perform a ritual to close the portal and banish the spirits back to the other side. The ritual was intense, and the family felt as though they were being watched by 100 pairs of eyes. the ritual was successful, and the family felt relieved. However, the psychic medium warned them that they needed to be careful. The hooded figures were still out there, and they would try to open the portal again. The Johnson family took the warning seriously and decided to move away from the house. They left everything behind and moved to a new town, hoping to start over. They never spoke of the horrors they had experienced, and they tried to forget about the supernatural world that had almost destroyed their lives. However, they could never shake the feeling that they were being watched. The hooded figures were still out there, waiting for their chance to open the portal once again. The Johnson family had escaped the malevolent spirit that haunted their home, but they would never escape the supernatural world that had become a part of their lives.